Hello friends, in this video we will be studying about the exit functions and many more different topics related to the process control. So let us begin with the first exit control. So in this exit control functions, what we are having, see, we can exit from a given process in different ways, as we have already discussed in the previous module. So we can exit from these functions. First is by different method. So first we are having here executing a return statement from the main function. See, when the main function finishes of execution, if we are using a return statement, when we are using the return statement, so we can exit from a given process in different ways. So first, in the main function, when we are having a return statement in the main function, the process is terminated, and this termination is a normal termination. Okay, the termination happens with the use of this return statement. Second is calling the exit function. Returning with an integer is equal to returning with an exit function. We have already seen in the previous module, that is, if return 0 is equal to exit of 0. So whatever integer number we are using in the return statement, if we are using the same number with the exit statement, then both of them do the same thing. So when exit function occurs, it includes the exit handlers. Which are registered by calling the @exit function. See, why is this @exit function used? @exit function is used to register the exit handlers, meaning whenever exit function is called, what should be done, what actions to be taken, those all actions come under this exit handlers, and we can register the exit handlers using this @exit function. So next one is by calling this underscore exit or exit. So we have seen that we are having different versions of exit. So this is underscore exit, this underscore capital exit, and only exit. So what is the difference between these two? The difference is that whenever these exits are called, they are directly returning without the exit handlers. Okay, so this exit provides a way to terminate the process without using these exit handlers. Means it is not returning any status, it is not terminating any of the resources, it is not calling any of the signal handlers. Directly the control is returned to the operating system. So using this also we can terminate a program. Finally, executing return from the start routine of the last thread. So these two, fourth and fifth, these are related to threads. So when we are using the threading concept, if we are using a return statement from the start routine of the last thread, there are many threads in a program. There are many threads in the program. So if we are using a return statement in the last thread, okay, in the last thread, in the main function of the last thread, if we are using a return statement, then the program will be automatically terminated. Another is pthread underscore exit. So like the exit function, all these, like these exit function, pthread underscore exit, this is also a function which is used when we are using the threading concept. So these all 5 methods are used to exit or used to terminate the program during the normal conditions. So when there are normal conditions, these all programs will be used for terminating the program or a process. Finally, we are having 3 abnormal types. So we are having the abnormal type of termination of the programs. One is by calling abort. So when we call the abort function, the process is terminated abnormally. So when this abort function is called, sig abort signal will be generated and automatically the process will be terminated. Next, when the process receives certain signals, that is interrupts, okay, whenever it receives certain signals for abortion of the processes, that time the process automatically terminates. This is also a abnormal form of termination. So next is we are having the So next we are having the termination, that is the in the terms of threads. Okay, thus the last thread responds to the cancellation request. So in a program I told you that there are many threads. So the last thread itself, it calls for cancellation of the request. If the last thread calls for the cancellation of the request, then also the termination occurs. So these are the different ways. These three ways are used for abnormal termination of the program. Now we have seen that 5 normal and 3 abnormal. So out of these 8 terminating functions, let any of the exit functions be executed. Only one code will be executed. If we are using exit, if we are using a return, if we are using abort, let it be any type of exiting functions. Only one same code is executed. That code is used for termination of the processes. Okay, so next question comes about the what termination status or what exit status will be used. So in case of any abnormal termination, the kernel, not the process, the kernel will generate the termination status. In case of abnormal termination, when we are doing the abnormal termination, the process does not understand whether it is terminating or not terminating. What it will do is, just it will kernel will generate the termination status to indicate the reason why it is doing the abnormal termination. This happens in case of abnormal termination. What happens in case of normal termination? In case of normal termination, the child or the process itself, it will generate the exit status, or it will generate the termination status automatically. Only in the case of abnormal termination, kernel will generate the termination status. In case of normal termination, the process itself will generate the termination status. In case of abnormal termination, the kernel will generate the termination status. Then next question is, so when we are having a parent-child relationship, so when we are having a parent, what happens when a parent terminates? What happens to the child that time? Next question, what happens when the child terminates? So these are the two important questions we have to address. So now see here, what happens if the parent terminates before the child? What happens in those case? The init process will become the parent of the terminated parent. So if a parent terminates and that parent is having children, it is having many children processes, that time children cannot run on their own. They require the parents for execution. So at that time, the init process will become its parent. The init process will become the parent of all these processes whose parents have been terminated. What is the process ID of init? We have seen in the previous video that the init process ID will be 1. So the process ID of each of those processes will be changed to 1. It means that init itself is the parent of all those processes. This is the answer to the first question. Next question, what happens when the child terminates? What happens? Another condition we have to worry is about what happens when the child terminates before the parent is terminating. That time what happens? See, if child terminates, we cannot get the ID of the child. We cannot fetch the data of the child. The child will completely disappear. That time what we have to do is, that kernel, it keeps a small amount of information of every terminating process. So if a child is terminated, the parent should be knowing that its child is terminated. So the kernel will give the information regarding the termination process. It keeps the information like its process ID, its termination status, its CPU time taken, like this. Different information about the terminating process will be kept by the kernel. Then the parent process will contact the kernel. It will check whether the data which is present in the kernel is the data of its own child. Okay, the parent process, it will contact the kernel and check for these all information to find out whether the terminated process is the child of its own. So that will be done, and when the parent finds that its own child has been terminated, at that time what it will do is, it will just take the information, and then it will relieve all the resources taken by those terminated processes. Okay, the kernel will then discard the memory used by the process and close its open files. Once this information is taken by the parents, okay, once all these information is fetched and given to the parent, then kernel will remove all the information in the system. So what type of that process is called? If a parent is present and its child is terminated, that time those processes are called as a zombie. It is called as a zombie process. What is a zombie process? In Unix file terminology, a process that has terminated but whose parent has not yet waited for it, means the parent is still working but the child has terminated. Such type of process is called as a zombie process. Okay, how do we get the zombie process? If it is indicated by a Z, when we are calling ps of one command, that time it is printing the zombie processes as Z. The processes are indicated as zombie by using the alphabet Z. So this is when the parent and the child will terminate without having the notification given to each other. Next we will be studying of the wait and wait PID functions. So what are these wait and wait PID functions is, see, whenever there is the termination, these wait and wait PID function will be used. So what they are used here is, so we need to be aware of the process that calls the wait and wait PID. So these are the three things which happen when we are using this wait and wait PID. So what happens? Block if all the children are still running. A parent is terminated and it is calling a wait or wait PID function. That time any other caller will be blocked because its children are still running. Otherwise what will happen? Return immediately with the termination status of the child. The child also will be terminated and its status should be returned. If the child has terminated already and is waiting for the termination status to be fetched. Next, return immediately with an error. Means these are the three possibilities which may happen when wait or wait PID is called. What is its syntax? Wait underscore PID underscore T is the data type, wait and stat lock. So what is this stat lock? It is a pointer to an integer. Stat lock is a pointer to an integer. It tells you what is the exit status when the termination occurs. Then we are having wait PID. So here we are having the PID and state lock, same as that, and int option. So we will be seeing what are all those. These two functions, if they are running successfully, they are returning a 0, otherwise they are returning -1 on error. If the error is occurring, then they are returning a -1. So what is the wait function doing? The wait function can block the caller until a child process terminates. So caller means whom? The function which is calling this wait function. The function which is calling this wait function will be blocked if the child process is still working. Till it terminates, that wait function will be blocked, but wait PID has an option to prevent the blocking. See, when it is blocked, it cannot do anything. It cannot work for some other functions. Simply it will be blocked or it will be idle. But wait PID function, it will be not blocked. It doesn't wait for the child to terminate first. It has a number of options that can control which process waits for it. So what options we are having? No, it is an integer status which is telling or the different ways of controlling how the process should act, whether it should wait for few minutes, whether it should continue the execution, or whether it should execute simultaneously. Such options will be given in this third argument of this wait PID. Wait function means it is blocking the caller till the child will complete. Child till it completes its execution, the wait function will be executed. So what about wait PID? Wait PID function means it does not wait until the child completes, it continues its work, and it will also specify the different options that will control the child process, So in general, wait and wait PIDs are concerned with the child execution, whether to wait or whether to continue. So these are the different functions of wait version. The wait and the wait PIDs, these are related to whenever a child process is terminated and the parent is still executing. In this situation, these two functions will be used. These two functions are having the different macros. What is a macro? Macro is just like a function which will execute some part of code. These are having different macros. These two functions are having the macros, and all these macros are beginning with a WIF. WIF exited. WIF exited is a macro. What it will do? It is true if the status was returned for a child terminated normally. So when this macro is executed, the macro is executed when the child is terminated normally. When it is terminated normally, what it will do is it will be executing any one of these three exit functions. Next is WIF signaled status. So what this macro is doing? It is true if the child is terminated abnormally. If the child has terminated abnormally, that time this function, that is WTERMISG, this is W terminated signal, will be abnormal signal. This is abnormal signal will be generated, and also additionally some implementation will be having this W core dump. Whenever the abnormal, see, whenever you are executing the C programming, sometimes you have gotten, even though all the statements are correct, there is no error syntactically in the program, core dumped error you are going to get. That error occurs because the abnormal termination of the program has happened. Another macro is WIF stopped. This is true if the status was returned for a child that is currently stopped. Currently stopped means it is not terminated, it is halted or it is suspended. So when such macro is invoked, that time W stop signal will be generated. W stop signal will be generated. Stop means what? It is not terminated, it is just halted or suspended for a time being. Next, WIF continued. It is true status when returned for a child that has been continued after a job control stop. See, here we have stopped. I told you stop means it is not the termination, it is just the suspension. So after the suspension means it is again going back to the ready state for executing. Process has different states we have already studied. One is the start state, then ready state, then executing state, then terminate, in between we are having suspended state, and then termination state we are having. Once it is present in the suspended state, it can go back to the ready state and start executing. So this happens when the WIF continued macro is invoked. When the WIF macro is invoked, that time the whatever stopped process, suspended process is there, that will be taken back again for the execution. So these are the different macros which are used when the wait and wait PID functions will be used for termination of the processes. In the same way, we are having the another wait function, that is wait3 and wait4 functions. So wait3 and wait4 functions, they are again used for termination only, but with apart from giving the termination status, they are giving the external additional arguments that allows the kernel to return the summary, means it gives the detailed information about the terminated processes. Wait3 and wait4, they give some additional information telling the different arguments or different details about the terminated process. What are its details? Its details are like CPU time, the amount of time system CPU time, number of page faults of that process, number of signals received, and different types the same information like this. So different types of information, additional information, if you want to get about the terminated process, we can use either wait 3 or wait 4. Few features are present in wait 3, other features are present in the wait 4. Just we have to keep in mind that wait PID, wait 3 and wait 4, these 4 wait signals or functions are used to get the information about the terminated processes. It might be a child terminated or a parent terminated. So to get the information, we are going to use these different types of wait functions. So finally we are going to the next type of concept, that is the race condition. What is race condition? See, when you are having multiple processes running together, when you are having a multiple processes running together and you are sharing the data among the processes. So when the data is shared among the multiple processes, they are trying to modify the shared data. When they are trying to modify the shared data, they are fighting for the CPU. If they get the CPU, then only they are going to do the tasks, whatever they want to do. If the CPU is not allotted, CPU in the sense the time slot, okay, if the time slot is not allotted, they cannot do or perform any of the tasks. So like that, so when the different multiple processes want to modify the shared data, want to get the CPU time, want to get the time slot, such condition is called as a race condition. In the previous example we have seen where a parent creates a child using a fork process and the child modifies the some variables. So we cannot assure that child first executes or parent first executes. One who gets the CPU time slot first, that will be executing. So each of them are having a race in between them to find out who is going to execute. So this race condition causes many different problems, like the data is inconsistent. What do you mean by inconsistent is, see for example, let me take a variable x. So when this variable x is shared between P1 process and P2 process, and x first is given to all of them and x is incremented, initially x value is 0, okay, initially x value is 0, P1 process increments, P2 process decrements the value of x. So what will be the final value of x which is used by the new process? It might be a incremented value, it might be original value, or it might be a decremented value. Why? Because it is shared. When it is shared between the different processes, the data can be inconsistent, okay. For avoiding these type of inconsistent, what we have to have, we should be having the synchronization. This you have studied in operating system. What is synchronization? Synchronization can be achieved by different things like semaphores, using monitors, using the locks. So like this the synchronization is achieved. Means when one process is using a shared data, other process should not be allowed to use the same shared data. This is called as synchronization. To avoid the race condition problems, we have to use the process called as synchronization. So understood what is race condition? In the race condition, the multiple processes are trying to do something with the shared data. They are trying to modify the shared data, and the final outcome always depends on the order in which the process is run. If the child process is first using, then it will be incremented. If the parent process is first using, then it will be decremented. So like this, depending on the order, whether the child or the parent who is using that process or who is using that shared data, depending on that we are going to get the outcome. So this condition is called as a race condition. Finally, we are studying about the EXEC function. What is this EXEC function? EXEC function is used for execution of the process. It is used for execution whenever we are using the fork system call. Okay, when we call the fork, that time a new process is created, that is a child process is created. Once the child process is created and then it calls exec, if the child process calls the exec, that time the child process will start executing automatically. Child process starts executing automatically. It doesn't mean that the process ID of the current process changes. No, the process ID will not change. What will change is only the execution area will change. Initially, parent was executing. All the data related to the parent was present in the memory. Now, exec is called by a child. So, this area of execution is replaced. This area of execution is replaced with the details of the child, whereas the process IDs won't change. Process ID of the parent remains the same. Process ID of the child also remains the same. Only the execution area will be changing. It will be completely replaced by the one who is calling the exec. Another example, process P1 is executing. It calls the fork system call. P2 is created. Then P2 calls exec. That time P1's data was present in the memory. But now since P2 is calling this exec, the complete memory will be replaced by the details of P2. The PID or the process ID of P1 is not changing. The process ID of P2 is also not changing. The one that changes is the execution area and the details present into it. The stack, the heap, the value of the variables, these are changing. Okay, so exec is used to replace the execution area in the memory. The process ID, see here, the process ID does not change, but a new process is not created. See, a new process also is not created. The process which is already present, that will be starting to execute. exec merely replaces the current process. Whatever the execution area will be filled with, that will be replaced by the text, data, heap and stack of the new process which wants to execute. There are different versions of exec, execl, execv, execl. These are all the different types of versions of exec. Mainly they are using either the path name or the file name. So when they are using a path name, it's always starting with a slash. So when it is starting with a slash, it means that it is a path name. Whenever it is starting with a name, it is a file name. So sometimes if it is starting with a path name and there is a slash, but that path name is not found, then it is interpreted as a script. Shell script means a shell program, and that program will be executed. Some of these exec functions also use the environment variables. See here argv, these are the arguments. We are having here one more argument, that is envp, means they are using the environment variable parameter list they are using for execution. So here L will indicate the list, V will indicate the vector. So in different condition, depending on the type of arguments, we are using these different types of exec functions. Now you can see the relationship between all the types of execute here. So first all these three, top layer, what they are having, exec, lp, l and le. These are just building the argument. They are having the arguments in it. Those arguments means these will be building the arguments. Then the whatever the second layer, exec, vp and v. These are taking the path as the prefix. Try each path prefix. Means whatever prefix is given as a path name or it is a shell script, that will be taken by this one. And execve, this is a system call which is taking the environment variables. So these all are taking the path names. So this is taking a shell script and these are taking the environment variables. Now we have seen what are environment variables. Environment variables are used to provide the details about the system. What is the UID, what is the GID, what is the memory size used of the system, what is the address of the system, like this. To give the details about the system, we are going to use this environment variables. So during the time of execution, we require the details about the system. That is why we are using the environment variables.